A medieval peasant could kill a trained Navy SEAL with nothing but a walking stick. While you're learning modern self-defense, you're missing the brutal survival techniques that kept our ancestors alive through the most violent period in human history. These weren't martial arts. They were life or death skills designed for one thing: making sure you went home alive. But here's what nobody tells you about why these work better than anything taught today. You know that weird feeling when something's just off? Medieval folks lived by that instinct. One wrong glance, one stranger lingering too long near the tavern door, and smart people started planning their exit. They didn't have the luxury of ignoring red flags. Castle guards perfected this art out of pure necessity. Watchtowers weren't just for show. They stationed lookouts and shifts around the clock. Why? Because attacks happened when people got comfortable. The moment a guard started daydreaming about his supper, that's precisely when raiders would strike. But here's what's brilliant about medieval awareness. They made it automatic. Every time they entered a room, tavern, or market square, they'd mentally note the exits. Who's sitting by the door? Which face doesn't belong? Where's the nearest weapon if things go sideways? Travelers developed an especially clever trick. They watched animals. Horses get jumpy before bandits appear. Dogs growl at trouble long before human ears pick up anything suspicious. Birds go quiet when predators lurk nearby. Smart medieval folks treated animals like an early warning system. The harsh reality? Most medieval attacks succeeded because victims dropped their guard at exactly the wrong moment. Walking home drunk from the alehouse, counting coins in public, or traveling alone after dark. These weren't random misfortunes. They were predictable patterns that predators exploited. Medieval people who survived understood something crucial. Staying alert wasn't paranoia, it was practical wisdom. They knew that noticing details could mean the difference between making it home safely or not making it home at all. Of course, awareness only gets you so far when trouble actually finds you. That's when you need something to fight back with, and medieval folks got incredibly creative about that. Medieval peasants weren't exactly browsing the local weapon shop when trouble knocked on their door. They grabbed whatever was handy and made it work. Take the humble walking staff. Every traveler carried one, ostensibly for hiking. But these weren't flimsy tourist souvenirs. A good oak staff could crack skulls just as easily as it helped you cross muddy streams. The beauty was in the deception. Nobody suspected Grandpa's walking stick until it was too late. Urban folks got creative fast. Cobblestones became medieval grenades. Makes sense, right? Free ammunition literally under your feet. During riots, people would pry up these stones faster than you could say civil unrest. Heavy, perfectly sized for throwing, and abundant. But here's where it gets interesting. Medieval kitchens were basically armories in disguise. That iron skillet, devastating when swung with conviction. Wooden ladles became clubs. Even broom handles turned into effective spears when desperation struck. Then there's the genius of everyday clothing. A thick cloak could entangle an attacker's weapon arm or blind them temporarily. Belts became improvised whips or tripping tools. Medieval folks understood something modern people forget. Anything can be a weapon if you're motivated enough. The key was speed and surprise. Attackers expected resistance from obvious weapons, not from kitchen utensil number 3. A chair thrown at someone's legs drops them faster than most fancy combat moves. Well, having makeshift weapons is one thing, but swinging them effectively? That's where understanding basic combat techniques becomes crucial, because flailing around with a ladle might feel empowering, but it won't save your life unless you know how to use it properly. Medieval fighters figured out something modern martial arts schools love to overcomplicate. Fancy moves get you killed. While Hollywood shows knights spinning around like ballet dancers, real medieval combat manuals stress the exact opposite. Keep it simple, keep it fast, keep breathing. The strongest techniques weren't about looking impressive. A quick thrust to the solar plexus beats a spinning kick every single time. Medieval masters taught their students to throw short, direct punches rather than wild haymakers. Why? Because when someone's trying to stab you with a dinner knife, you don't have time for choreography. Your offhand wasn't just decoration either. Smart fighters used it constantly, blocking incoming strikes, grabbing wrists, or shoving attackers off balance. Think of it as your insurance policy while your dominant hand does the heavy lifting. But here's where medieval self-defense gets brutally practical. Those old fighting manuals didn't mess around with fair play rules. They targeted soft spots without hesitation: eyes, throat, groin, instep. A quick finger jab to the eye socket ended more fights than any sword technique ever did. Knights training for real combat learned this harsh lesson early. Their instructors hammered one rule into their heads: waste zero energy on showy moves. Every strike had to serve a purpose. Every block had to set up the next attack. Efficiency meant survival. The weirdest part? This simple approach actually required more skill than fancy techniques. Anyone can throw a wild punch, but landing a precise strike to the throat while someone's swinging a club at your head? That takes serious practice and nerves of steel. Speaking of nerves, medieval fighters also mastered something modern people struggle with. Medieval warriors knew something modern people often forget. Most real fights end up nose to nose, tangled up like angry cats. When your sword breaks or gets knocked away, wrestling skills keep you breathing. Knights actually spent hours learning Harnischfechten, fancy German for armored wrestling. These guys figured out how to throw each other around while wearing 60 pounds of metal. Pretty impressive when you can barely move in a winter coat, right? But here's the thing about medieval grappling. It wasn't about muscle-bound strongmen. Smart fighters targeted joints and balance points. Grab someone's wrist and twist hard. Suddenly, their fancy dagger becomes useless. A quick elbow strike to the solar plexus drops most people faster than a sack of turnips. Then there's the beauty of simple foot sweeps. Step behind someone's ankle while pushing their chest, and physics does the rest. Medieval fighters loved this because heavy clothing and boots made people top-heavy and clumsy. Lapel grabs worked wonders too. Those thick wool cloaks everyone wore, perfect handles for controlling an opponent. Yank someone forward while driving your knee up, and the fight's basically over. Headlocks came naturally when people bundled up in winter gear with convenient hood attachments. The dirty secret medieval manuals taught grappling beats fancy sword work in tight spaces. Castle corridors, tavern brawls, muddy roads, all favored wrestlers over fencers. Knights trained for this reality because real combat rarely looked like Hollywood duels. Well, knowing how to wrestle helps, but what happens when you're facing someone bigger and stronger? Sometimes the best fight is the one you never have to start. Sometimes the best fight is the one that never happens. Medieval folks knew this better than anyone. Why risk your neck when a good scare could send trouble packing? Loud shouts worked wonders back then. A deep, angry roar made bandits think twice about their life choices. Groups of travelers discovered something magical, banging shields together while stomping feet in perfect rhythm. The noise made 3 people sound like 30. Pretty clever for folks without smartphones, right? Then there were the truly creative types. Some travelers wore wolf pelts or bizarre hats that made them look completely unhinged. Nothing says, find an easier target like a guy wearing a dead badger on his head, muttering to himself. Crazy is contagious. Nobody wanted to catch it. But here's where it gets interesting. Even brandishing a tiny knife created doubt in attackers' minds. They couldn't tell if you were secretly skilled or just desperate enough to get lucky. Medieval bullies preferred sure things, not gambling with their faces. Medieval watchmen had the smartest trick of all, those loud horn blasts. 1 blast meant, I'm here and awake. 2 blasts meant, I see you creeping around. 3 blasts? That meant, my buddies with pointy sticks are coming fast. Most troublemakers decided they had urgent business elsewhere. The beauty of intimidation was its efficiency. No broken bones, no bloodstains on good clothes, no explaining bodies to the local sheriff. Just pure psychological warfare that left everyone breathing and walking away. Well, intimidation worked great when it worked, but when it didn't, that's when knowing your escape routes became absolutely critical. Sometimes the smartest fight is the one you never finish. Medieval folks knew this better than anyone. They lived in a world where running away wasn't cowardice, it was survival. City dwellers became masters at vanishing acts. They memorized every twisted alley, every hidden doorway, every rooftop ladder in their neighborhood. Makes sense, right? When trouble started brewing in the market square, you didn't want to be fumbling around looking for an exit like some confused tourist. Shepherds had their own tricks. They'd blend into crowds faster than you could blink, then slip away when nobody was watching. Out in the countryside, they knew which hedgerows provided cover and which streams could mask their footsteps. These guys could disappear into landscape like medieval ninjas. But here's where it gets interesting. Even knights carried escape money. Yes, those proud warriors in shining armor kept coins specifically for bribing their way past locked gates when things went sideways. Pride doesn't help much when you're bleeding and need medical attention. Medieval castles weren't just built for sieges. They included secret postern doors, basically medieval panic rooms with built-in exits. Smart lords knew that sometimes you needed to slip out quietly rather than fight your way through the front gate. The marketplace offered its own advantages. Drop a basket of apples behind you, and suddenly your pursuers are playing hopscotch instead of chasing you. Toss a handful of coins in the opposite direction, and watch greed work its magic. Well, escaping is only half the battle. What happens when you can't run and need to defend yourself with whatever's lying around? Medieval folks knew something we've forgotten today. Everything around you is a potential shield or weapon. Your breakfast bowl, perfect for blocking a blade, that heavy winter cloak hanging by the door. Toss it at someone's face and watch them stumble around like they're playing blind man's bluff. But here's where it gets clever. Small coins weren't just for buying bread. Grab a handful and fling them at an attacker's eyes. Works better than you'd think. Sand worked too, though finding clean sand in a medieval city was about as likely as finding an honest tax collector. Kitchen tools made excellent impromptu weapons. Iron pots could crack skulls, wooden ladles had surprising reach, and broom handles? Well, they weren't just for sweeping anymore. The trick was positioning these items where you could grab them fast during trouble. Then there's the lantern technique. Darkness was everywhere back then, so people always had oil lamps or candles nearby. Shine that flame directly into someone's eyes, and they're temporarily blinded. Simple physics, really. Pupils can't adjust that quickly. Heavy wooden stools became instant shields. Much better than trying to block a knife with your bare hands, which tends to end poorly for everyone involved. Even a thick leather belt could wrap around a wrist or ankle to trip someone up. The smartest medieval families kept useful objects near doorways and windows, not obviously placed, mind you, but close enough to snatch during an emergency. Sometimes the most ordinary household item made the difference between a bad day and your last day. Speaking of strategic positioning, where you chose to make your stand mattered just as much as what you fought with. Fighting on flat ground against multiple attackers, that's basically suicide with extra steps. Medieval folks figured this out fast. They learned to use every bump, wall, and puddle to their advantage. Take stairs, for instance. A single defender at the top could hold off several attackers climbing up. Your sword or staff naturally reaches down while theirs swing up awkwardly. Physics becomes your best friend. Castle defenders made this an art form. Narrow spiral staircases wound clockwise, so right-handed attackers struggled to swing their weapons effectively. Doorways work like medieval bouncers. Only one person fits through at a time, no matter how many want in. Smart defenders position themselves just inside, forcing attackers into a deadly single-file line. It's crowd control with consequences. But here's where it gets clever. Medieval peasants turned everyday terrain into defensive gold. That muddy field behind your cottage? Perfect for slowing down armored knights. Rain made things even better. Heavy armor becomes a liability when you're slipping around like a drunken goose. Rivers and streams created natural barriers. Cross to the other side, and suddenly your pursuers face a choice. Get wet or give up. Most chose option 2. Even furniture counted as terrain. Flip a heavy table and you've got instant cover. Medieval tavern brawls taught people to use benches, chairs, anything solid as obstacles. The goal wasn't just protection, it was controlling where the fight happened. Rural folk hiding behind trees, carts, or stone walls could block incoming strikes while staying mobile. Movement plus cover equals survival. Standing in the open like some heroic fool, that's how you become a cautionary tale. Speaking of survival tactics, working together changes everything completely. Medieval guards figured out something crucial about staying alive. 2 pairs of eyes beat 1 every single time. They patrolled in teams because while one guy watched the gate, his partner could scan the shadows behind them. Smart, right? But here's where it gets tricky. More people doesn't automatically mean safer. Ever try coordinating 3 friends to pick a restaurant? Now imagine doing that when bandits are charging at you with pointy sticks. The key was keeping things stupidly simple. Medieval defenders used basic hand signals, point left, wave right, thumbs up for all clear. Nothing fancy. When trouble hit, they'd make quick bird calls or whistle patterns. One sharp whistle meant danger coming. Two meant circle up now. Speaking of circles, that was their go-to formation. Everyone faced outward, backs together, so nobody could sneak up from behind. Think of it like a medieval huddle, except instead of discussing football plays, you're trying not to get stabbed. Families practiced what we'd call rally points today. When chaos broke out, everyone knew to meet at the big oak tree or behind the barn. No discussion, no debate, just run there and regroup. Then there's the caravan trick that really worked. Medieval merchants traveling dangerous roads would hire extra guards, sure, but they'd also recruit other travelers. Strength in numbers, but also shared costs. Pretty clever for guys without business degrees. The smartest groups assigned roles ahead of time. You watch left, I'll watch right. She handles the rear. When everyone knows their job, nobody's standing around wondering what to do while trouble unfolds. But what happens when those numbers turn against you? Here's something your grandmother probably never told you. Medieval folks were masters at stopping troublemakers without turning them into corpses. Why? Well, killing someone back then meant dealing with angry families, blood feuds, and lots of paperwork nobody wanted. Wooden practice swords were brilliant for this, blunt as a butter knife, but heavy enough to ring someone's bell properly. One good whack to the head and your attacker would be taking a nice nap on the cobblestones. No blood, no death, just a really bad headache and some wounded pride. But here's where it gets clever. Grappling techniques were huge back then. A simple arm lock could turn the biggest bully into a whimpering mess faster than you could say, yield. Trips and sweeps worked wonders too. Hard to threaten someone when you're kissing dirt. Then there were the sneaky tricks. Peasants kept pouches of ground pepper or flour for emergencies. Nothing stops a charging bandit like a face full of spice. Makes you wonder why we stopped carrying pocket pepper, right? Shepherd staffs were perfect for pinning technique. Hook the curved end behind someone's leg or neck, and suddenly they're stuck like a bug under a glass. City guards loved weighted ropes called cautious. One good swing to the shoulder or thigh, and fights ended fast without permanent damage. The real genius was knowing when enough was enough. Medieval people understood that a stop threat was better than a dead enemy seeking revenge later. Speaking of smart tactics, what happens when one attacker becomes two or three? When you're facing more than one attacker, your brain wants to panic. Don't let it. Medieval fighters knew something most people miss today. Multiple opponents aren't twice as dangerous. They're often half as smart. Here's the weird part. Groups make mistakes individuals don't. They get in each other's way, assume someone else will make the first move, and create openings you can exploit. Knights called this the crowd curse. The golden rule, never let them surround you. Medieval manuals taught fighters to move sideways like a crab, keeping all attackers in front. Think of it as creating your own personal bottleneck. You want them coming at you single file, not from all directions. Quick strikes work better than prolonged battles. Hit fast, move immediately, hit again. Standing still turns you into a sitting duck. Medieval fighters used what they called strike and drift. Land a blow, slide away, repeat. Your legs become your best weapon. But here's where it gets clever. Use their numbers against them. Throw your cloak, a handful of dirt, even your hat at the group. While they're distracted or stumbling over each other, you bolt. Knights sometimes carried small bags of pepper for exactly this reason. Not very noble, but very effective. Obstacles become your best friends. Doorways, trees, even overturned carts force attackers into single file. Medieval defenders loved narrow bridges for this reason. 10 enemies become one enemy, with 9 waiting behind. The smartest medieval fighters knew when multiple threats appeared. Escape often beat engagement. Running isn't cowardice when the odds stink. Speaking of odds, let's talk about reading danger before it reaches you. Medieval folks didn't have the luxury of being wrong about danger. One bad read could mean losing your purse, your horse, or worse, your life. Street performers became masters at this game. They'd scan crowds like hawks, watching for the telltale signs. Hands tucked deep in cloaks. Red flag, someone avoiding eye contact while moving closer. Double red flag. The smart performers always positioned themselves near quick exits because they knew trouble often came disguised as curious onlookers. But here's where it gets interesting. Villagers developed their own early warning systems that would make modern security experts jealous. Dogs weren't just pets, they were four-legged alarm bells. A low growl from old Rover meant someone was prowling around who shouldn't be. Smart farmers trusted their dogs' noses over their own eyes every single time. Castle guards took this even further. They memorized the colors and symbols of every major family within 50 miles. Seeing the wrong banner approaching meant preparing for conflict or quickly deciding whether to open the gates. Makes sense, right? Then there's the psychological element nobody talks about. Medieval people watched breathing patterns, posture shifts, and where someone's weight settled on their feet. A person ready to fight stands differently than someone just passing through. Their shoulders tense up, their stance widens slightly. The weirdest part? They even paid attention to speech patterns. Nervous attackers often talked too fast or too slow, gave unnecessary details, or asked strange questions about who else might be around. Well, knowing danger is only half the battle. The other half involves creating your own advantages when trouble inevitably finds you. Medieval folks understood something modern people often forget. The best defense isn't always a weapon. It's a good old-fashioned wall between you and trouble. Market vendors became masters of instant fortification. When fights broke out, they'd flip their wooden stall sideways faster than you could blink. Those heavy oak tables made excellent shields against flying fists and thrown objects. Smart traders positioned their carts so they could create quick escape routes or bottlenecks that forced troublemakers to approach one at a time. City dwellers got creative with furniture placement. A sturdy chair wedged under a door handle could stop most intruders cold. Iron pots worked even better. Jam one under the door at just the right angle, and even a strong man would struggle to force his way in. Makes sense, right? But here's where medieval ingenuity really shined. Outdoor barriers. Farmers didn't just accept that bandits might raid their property. They dug shallow trenches along common approach paths, just deep enough to trip up horses or make riders dismount. Some planted thorny rose bushes or blackberry vines in strategic spots, painful and effective. Well, the truly paranoid types stacked barrels of water or grain near their doors. Not just for storage, those barrels could be rolled into doorways during emergencies, creating instant blockades that bought precious time for help to arrive. Towns developed whole systems around movable barriers. When danger approached, residents knew exactly which carts to overturn and where to position them for maximum protection. Yet even the best barriers meant nothing if you didn't know when and how to retreat strategically. Look, sometimes the smartest move is backing away slowly. Medieval fighters knew this better than anyone. Retreat wasn't cowardly, it was tactical genius. Knights perfected the feigned retreat centuries before anyone called it strategy. They'd pretend to run scared, then spin around when attackers got cocky and overextended. Works like a charm when someone thinks they've got you beat. The trick? Make it look real enough that they actually chase you. But here's where it gets interesting for regular folk. Village defenders used what I call the noisy exit technique. If bandits broke into your home, you'd make a huge racket escaping through the back door, yelling, banging pots, whatever. Why? Because loud fleeing people draw attention away from quiet family members hiding upstairs. Medieval guides were brilliant about this stuff. They'd scout retreat routes before trouble even started, marking which alleys connected where and which rooftops you could actually climb. Smart thinking, right? Then there's the distraction drop. Toss your cloak behind you while retreating. Attackers instinctively look down, giving you precious seconds. Coins work even better because, well, who doesn't pause for money? The golden rule medieval folks lived by. Only slow down to help someone in genuine mortal danger. Harsh, but practical. Speed saves lives when things go sideways. Here's the weird part. Sometimes retreating actually makes you safer than standing your ground. Distance creates options. Close quarters eliminate them. Of course, knowing when to retreat means understanding what's happening in your head first. Mental preparation separates survivors from victims, and medieval warriors had some fascinating tricks for staying calm under pressure. Your heart pounds. Your hands shake. That knot in your stomach feels like it weighs 50 pounds. Well, medieval fighters dealt with the exact same terror you're feeling right now. But here's the thing they figured out centuries ago. Fear isn't your enemy. It's actually useful information. Those shaking hands, your body preparing for action. That racing heart, more blood flowing to your muscles. Medieval knights didn't try to eliminate fear. They learned to work with it. Breathing techniques weren't invented by modern yoga instructors. Monks taught these methods to nervous soldiers heading into battle. 4 counts in, hold for 4, out for 4. Simple math that kept warriors functional when everything went sideways. Then there's the mental rehearsal trick. Knights would lie awake visualizing their sword movements, imagining different attack scenarios. They'd practice responses in their heads dozens of times before ever facing real danger. Today, we call this visualization, but back then it was just good sense. Medieval fighters also used what they called warrior sayings, short phrases repeated under pressure. Think of them as the world's first motivational mantras. Strike fast, step back, eyes up, feet ready. Nothing fancy, just simple words that kept focus sharp when chaos erupted. The smartest medieval advice? Accept that you'll be scared and plan accordingly. Panic happens when fear surprises you, but when you expect it, acknowledge it and keep moving anyway. That's when ordinary people become surprisingly effective defenders. Your ancestors survived because they prepared their minds, not just their bodies. Fear becomes fuel when you know how to use it properly.